Thank you for joining us. I'm Laura Jones, and in this session we're speaking with elite ultra runner Ragna Debats. Ragna has a long list of accolades to her name. We only have time to list a few of them today, but they include being the 2018 double world champion in both skyrunning and ultra-trail. And in 2019, Ragna won the Marathon des Sables, Transvulcania and the UTMB CCC. 2020 is looking like an incredible adventure for Ragna and her family, with them travelling around 7 continents and competing in some of the world's best races. Ragna runs for Merrell, NKBV, Naked, MRW, Nutritape, Santanderina and the Running Clinic. She's 41 years old and is from the Netherlands. Ragna, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good evening.
So before we get into the detail, Ragna, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how your running journey started.
Okay, so my running journey started about 10 years ago. So I got into running quite late, when I was already 28, more or less. I grew up with sports, but I grew up with horse riding. So I was a horse trainer, and I was very ambitious. I wanted to go to the Olympics, but at some point I realized that I wasn't going in the right way. So I stopped my running career, and instead, I started studying. After my studies, I moved to Spain, and I didn't run at all at that time. Nothing at all, so I couldn't actually run. And in Spain I discovered running, and I also discovered trail running, and that's how it all began. So in 10 years time I worked myself up from scratch until the top, basically. So it was a very slow process, and every year I became better. So I never had like big ups and downs, but it's just like a very slow progression until I finally in 2018 reached I think the maximum one can achieve in this sport.
Yeah, in just 10 years, that's incredible. And obviously not forgetting that in that time you obviously, had honour and, had a child. So that's amazing, really, in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, actually, the best part of my career began after Anna was born. So I think actually the year I was pregnant was a very good year for me, for my body, to do a reset, to really recover from the previous years of running. So to really start again really fit. And also when she was born, it helped me a lot to train a little bit more efficiently, because before she was born I had more time to do more freely what I wanted to do, and afterwards my time was very limited because I spent a lot of time with her, obviously. So me and my trainer set up a plan to train with a less amount of time but more efficiently, and that really worked for me. And that's when I made the step to the top, actually. So yeah, sometimes it can be more harder when you have a child, but it can also have big advantages. And
yeah,
I think actually traveling with her gives me a lot of strength. So for me, it's a good thing, and it's been a positive thing in my sports career to have a child.
Yeah. Oh, that's, as a mother, that's brilliant. It's so lovely to hear that, and I know that so many people watching will love to hear that. So just trying to understand your motivations for being an ultra runner and running these long distances. What was it that first of all made you want to try, and makes you continue to want to push further?
During my career, you mean? I'm the sort of person that I always want to discover, explore, expand my limits. So it's only a natural thing to push myself every time a little bit further. So, for example, when I started running, I started on the flat. I could only run for about 1 kilometer, maybe. That was 10 years ago. And then, so once I could do 1 kilometer, I thought, well, I'm going for 2 kilometers. So I always put my goals a little bit higher every time, but I try not to put them too high, so they are easy to achieve, but every time I ask a little bit more of myself, and I'm just curious where my limits are, how far I can push myself without suffering too much. So that's something I've always done, and that's probably why my progression has been slowly, but always upwards. So I like pushing myself and just to see how far I can go. Actually, that's when I became world champion in 2018. This is probably, I think, why I chose to start to do different things as well. Because once I had achieved this championship, I didn't feel the urge to try and win it again. But I wanted instead to do something else. So that's why I went to race Marathon des Sables. Because it's such a different race and such a different challenge, and I really wanted to see how well I could perform in this type of race with these kind of extreme circumstances in which you have to compete.
Yeah.
And also that's the reason this year that we set off this big project, which I think is very ambitious, and hopefully it will work out well.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And what have been your biggest challenges during your running journey, and how have they sort of changed you?
When I started running, I didn't actually have like a goal, because when I was a horse trainer, I did have a goal. Like, I wanted to become an Olympic rider. And when I stopped this career, I didn't want to. Actually, I didn't want to compete again. So I grew into it, but I never put my goals very high. So when I started running, my aim was never to become a world champion, for example. It's just kind of a coincidence of because of my own nature, I guess, to try and grow and improve, that I became better and better, and I achieved all the things I have achieved. But I never expected to become such an elite runner, to say it this way. I never really expected it. So I think I'm a person that normally when I do things, I always try to do them as good as I can, and in most things in my life I can have a good result. So I always see myself as if you look at the 1 to 10 scale, I see myself as like an 8 person. I can do the things well, but I never see myself at the top. So it's just I feel really lucky to have been able to achieve the things I've achieved in the last couple of years.
Yeah, amazing. And now you mentioned that you ran Marathon des Sables in 2019, which obviously is a staged race, so a bit different. Now that you've done so many different sorts of races, do you have a favourite race distance? What do you feel is would be your favourite?
My favorite race distance is probably somewhere like 70, maybe from 60 to 90. Because it's, I think, in distance easy to cover. It's a good pace, and it's not too long, so it never gives you the feeling or the doubt that, can I finish it? Will my body be able to recover? Can I stay injury free? So it's a distance I feel very comfortable in, but I like to run longer distances as well. So this year most of my races are 100 kilometer or even longer. This is also something I want to explore, because, for example, I haven't run a 100 miler yet, and this year I'm going to run UTMB, which will be the first one. And I don't know yet how my body will respond. Maybe I can do it really well. Maybe it will be a struggle, because the longest I've run so far has been 130 kilometers, which I felt comfortable with, but I think it is a big distance, the change from 100 to 130. So it makes it longer for you, and it's noticeable.
Yeah. So maybe if we ask you this time next year, you might say your favourite race distance is 100 miles, or you might say, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, it's possible.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing this year, because throughout 2020, you're taking part in your own Rolling Mountains challenge, and we'll put the links to the website so people can have a look.
Yes.
But just to sort of, mention a couple of the key things. You're going to, as you say, take part in UTMB. Mount Kilimanjaro is in there, isn't it? Western States. So some.
I'm not sure now, because I wasn't. I've not gone through the lottery, so. And I think the Ultra-Trail Tour announced already the list, and I haven't seen this list personally, but I've heard that I'm not on this list. So I am now, tomorrow I'm actually meeting with Mary, I think, and so I will speak to it about it, but I may not be able to run Western States. It is, I think, a real pity if that's the case, but then we will have to look for another big race in the States.
Yeah.
So that's the one, yeah, we don't know yet.
Oh, so that's a shame. But can you tell us a little bit about the challenge and what the thinking was behind it? And obviously you've got Honor and you've got Brew the dog with you as well, so it's a real family adventure. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Rolling Mountains was born really because after Honor was born, so she's 5 now, we decided we wanted to carry on our lifestyle. So me and my partner are both elite runners, and we wanted to keep doing what we were doing, but we wanted to do it with the family, as a family thing. So we wouldn't go to a race without our daughter. We would always take her with us, and if we could, or if we can, we always take the dog as well, because we love to travel all together. So within Europe, we've always tried to take him as well. And people really admire this, and people always ask us lots of questions, and how can you do that, and how can you perform so well? And we saw you yesterday, you were carrying her, you were playing with her, you were doing all these things, and now today you're running and you're winning. So they find it really impressive, admiring, and they want to know how we can do it. And so we had the idea to go traveling, set our goals really high personally, so to look for really challenging races, to go together as a family to try and achieve our goals, and to travel with a cameraman so he could film everything, like family life, how we train, how we manage, how we discover new places, and how we perform during the races. So really like to answer all those people who always ask us so many questions, or to give them like an insight of how we really deal with all those things. And so that's how it began and how we set it up. So it's really our project. We've like set it up by ourselves without help of an agent, and because we wanted it really to be our personal project. So it means a lot of work, and but it's looking really good, because now this is the first continent, so we're still at the beginning. We have the prologue, and now we've been to Nepal with our dog. We've gone to the Everest Base Camp at an altitude of 5,300 meters with our daughter and the dog. It was amazing. It was amazing to see how well she adapts to the altitude, and it was interesting for us to hike, train, and to manage all those things. I've seen some of what we filmed, and it looks amazing. And now we are in Hong Kong, only a couple of days before the Hong Kong 100. Hong Kong has been really a positive experience, really surprising. And now it's just like getting ready for the race.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think that, you know, Honor was there with you at Everest Base Camp. You know, I saw her there all wrapped up with you, and you know, for her it's just gonna, at the moment at 5 years old, just be like the normal thing she does with mum and dad, and it's only going to be when she looks back when she's older and realizes, wow, you know, that was really something, you know, quite incredible.
Yeah, I think she will. I think she is at an age where she will remember lots of things she's experiencing now. And before we set off, I was a little bit, or my concern was that she would miss her friends, and that it would be difficult from that point of view. But now I really, we've been traveling for like 2 months. No, not yet, but I realized that for her, the most important are the parents, and I've seen that our relationship has become a lot stronger during this trip. So really, at this age, I think the most important are the parents. I'm really feeling that, and I feel very, very close to her, and our bond has become even stronger. And she, for example, I speak Dutch with her, and since we are traveling, she has improved a lot as well, her language. Also, she's learning English. So yeah, lots of exciting things. I think it's going to be a real positive thing in her life.
Yeah, like
socially, I think we meet many different children, and we try to adapt and give her time to play with them as well. So for example, in Nepal, she made 2 little friends and played with them. It was lovely to watch.
Yeah.
And here in Hong Kong, she's been with different children, so she doesn't have like the same children all the time, but she still can have social contact with children, which is, I guess, good for her, and which is what she also needs.
Yeah, just such an just, you know, how much it will enrich her life, and seeing all those different people and different cultures, and yeah, it's amazing. Okay, who or what have had the biggest influence or impact on your ultra running? Who would you say have been your biggest influences?
Ooh, a person. Who influences me? Oh, it's difficult to say. I'm not too sure what to say. I think like it inspired me, or just like influenced or helped me.
Yeah, it could be a bit of both. You know, it could be some people mention people that have been sort of coaches or training partners, and other people, it's people they've never met but who they, you know, sort of inspired them to.
I think it's like a mixture. I think definitely my trainer, because I started training with him like maybe 8 years ago. So basically in the beginning of my career, when I wasn't aiming at anything, he came up to me and he said that he wanted to train me because he saw me a good runner. And I, first of all, the first time he talked to me, I said I didn't want to train with a trainer, and I just I sort of pushed him away. And then half a year later, I met him again, and he said again to me that he wanted to train me, and I accepted at that time. And that is how it all began. So we and I'm still training with him, so we kind of grew together, and he knows me a lot better than I know myself. So he's been very important, and I think I'm very grateful to him actually, because he never pushed me too hard. So he saw me a good runner, but he never tried to force my body or to achieve things too quickly. He just every year changed my training, and we built it up very slowly until we finally achieved what probably he thought I could do, like since many years, even when I didn't think that. So he's a person who always believed in me. And then I think other important people, I can say, for example, my father, who always has taught me to follow my heart. And he always told me, when you follow your heart, you will achieve what you want, and you will be happy. So so that's something I've always done. That's probably thanks to that I've become a sports person. I've trusted to in this type of work, to say it that way. So and then my family I think is my strength. Without my family I wouldn't run. My family gives a sense to my life. So if I was a good runner but I couldn't do it with my family, there would be no point in all of this. My family is very, very important for me.
Yeah, of course. They're like your reason why, really, aren't they? Okay, now you mentioned before that when you were working with the horses, you had sort of a big long-term goal, which was that you wanted to compete at the Olympics. Yeah. But wasn't the case when you started running. It's something that's come about more naturally. Now, do you have any sort of long-term goals, things that you'd like to achieve with your running? I mean, you've already accomplished so much. Is there anything left you'd like to achieve?
I think for me, rolling mountains is a big goal, very big goal, because it's such a complete goal, and I also think it will be like a great thing to remember for the rest of my life as we make all those documentaries and finally a film. So for me, it's like a combination of everything what I have achieved. So it's very personally very, very important project. And when we finish next year, we'll see. At the moment, I'm living really for this project. So this is my big goal. It includes so many things. I mean, I like the 100-miler, like as race challenges as Kilimanjaro, the highest race in the world. We're racing on the Antarctic, extreme cold. We are going to repeat a race which is similar to Marathon des Sables, but in the jungle with high humidity, which is also very, very extreme, big challenge. So we have many very extreme and very difficult challenges to achieve. So I will be very pleased if I can actually achieve all of them. And I think doing it as a family is just, for me, it's the best I can imagine. So this is I think my very, very biggest goal I've ever had.
Yeah, and what an amazing thing to all be doing it together as well. Okay, I'd just like to ask you a little bit more about your training and how how that sort of looks like when you're getting ready for a big race. So, for example, last year in 2019, you won the Marathon des Sables. Can you talk us through how your training looks? What sort of intensity you trained at, and how you got ready for that race?
For that race, okay. So for me, this race was very difficult to imagine what I would expect. I knew it's a very famous race. Many people train for a very long time to get ready for the race to achieve the best result as possible. I had never been in the desert, so I didn't know what to expect exactly. I didn't know what it would be like to run with such a heavy pack on my back. So there were many unknown factors. I also didn't know how my body would react to the circumstances, like sleeping in such a basic tent, the cold during the night, the heat during the day. So all of this, there were so many factors. That's also why I chose to run it. But I couldn't really control from home because I didn't know how it was going to be. That I just decided to train literally in a dry riverbed, which I had close by. So it's you can imagine it's like there's no water in it, but it's like many stones, smaller stones, bigger stones, like gravel stones, which are like similar to a beach. Actually, the effect. So that's what I did, and it is in a riverbed. I can go slightly downhill, and I also used the slide uphill a lot to train in. And it was about 10 kilometers long, so I had quite a long stretch to train in. and I ran a lot in there to get my feet and everything used to the stony terrain of I expected to find in the desert. I never really left the mountains because afterwards I wanted to carry on with mountain running, so I wanted to keep the contact with the mountains as well. And I never went to the beach because I know many people do that, but I don't really like running on a beach, so I just 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 didn't go there basically. And I did do a lot of interval training sessions, and I ran with different kind of weights on my back to get used to the to carrying the weight, which I think was very useful. So I did very different training sessions. Sometimes I went for like a long run with maybe 3 kilos on my back, so not so much as in the race, but still like a considerable weight. I did some race, maybe some runs of about an hour with 6 kilos on my back, just to get used also to the actual weight I would be carrying. And then I did many training sessions like with high intensity. So for example, a progressive run of 3 minutes, increasing the pace every minute with 3 or 4 kilos on my back. So the amount of time I was carrying the weight was very limited, but the intensity was very high. And I think that it was tough to do them, and it made me really strong.
Yeah.
So when I normally train in the mountains, I probably run more on mountainous terrain. And in my preparation for Marathon des Sables, I did slightly flatter stretches in general, but I never lost touch with the mountains.
And so, how heavy was your pack on race day?
It was more or less the minimum weight. I can't remember if that's 5.5 or 6.5 kilos, but and then it was 200 grams over this weight. So if the minimum weight was 5.5, I carried 5.7, but I can't remember if it was 6.5 or 5.5. So, but it was like the minimum plus 200 grams.
Yeah, wow.
It is very difficult to achieve it, and it means that you can only carry the compulsory gear and your food, nothing else. So,
yes. So what did you rely on? Obviously you had to keep it just to the absolute basics. So you know, what did you have in your pack that got you through that race?
I literally had only the compulsory gear, so mandatory gear, and food. So the meals and recovery and the food I was using during the race. So it's the only thing I had. So I didn't carry, for example, a toothbrush or a separate pair of shoes or even sandals, or I didn't even have toilet paper. I didn't have anything else. I just had the mandatory gear, like sun protection, like a whistle, compass, space blanket, all those typical things you have to carry, and the food. That's all.
Wow, amazing.
I didn't have clothes to get changed, so I was wearing the same clothes all the time.
So what was it like actually on, you know, you said you were you didn't know how it was going to go with the sleeping in the, you know, in the very basic tents and things like that. How did it go? Did you manage to sleep? What was the actual race experience like?
It really surprised me because I actually managed really well. It was really cold at night, so the first night, which was before the race started, I was really afraid of. I got really cold, so I became really worried about the cold nights and my recovery process. But then we slept with 8 people in one tent, and we decided to stay really close to each other and help each other keeping warm. And we used the blanket, which is on the which covers the tent in the bottom. We used it also to keep us warm from the side. So I did have, which is not compulsory, I had earplugs, and I had something to tap my eyes. So I put it on, rest a lot, and it really helped. Both those things really helped me, I think, to disconnect. And actually, I slept amazingly well. Actually, I thought it was amazing because there were no noises. I mean, maybe other people snoring, but no. Sleeping in nature is always very gratifying. I think it's, you don't have like artificial sounds, no cars, no airplanes, no nothing. So I think I recovered really well throughout the night, and I stayed warm, and that's probably why I performed well as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You know, yeah, and there's nothing. It's horrible to be cold, isn't it? So it was good that you didn't have to contend with that. Okay. Now thinking about the mental side of ultra running, what strategies do you use to help you get through you know, a race when it's really difficult and your head is telling you to stop?
I always try to stay very positive. So when I have some negative thoughts in my mind, like I feel tired, or if my tummy is not as well as I want it to be, or when I'm not in a position I want to be, I try to find things which motivate me to run and to fight, and to have to. I try to turn things around so I can actually enjoy. For me, it's very important that when I'm running, that I'm enjoying at the same time. So I don't like running and suffering very much. I prefer to stay within the limit of like enjoying, even though I'm pushing. So yeah, just staying positive. That's the basic, I think.
Yeah. And can you, obviously you talked a little bit about the food that you had to carry for Marathon des Sables, but on a race that's where you haven't got to carry all of your kit for several days, so what do you like nutrition wise when you're running? What works for you?
I like very simple food, as natural as possible, and I prefer just to have a couple of different types of food, so not to mix too many things. And what I like most is like fruits with sugar, like a mixture, like the jelly bars, basically. So, and soft things like banana. Maybe just natural rice, sushi, for example. On some occasions, not so much gels. Yeah, basically that's what are my main things are, like the jelly. I also sometimes just have like sweeties. So sugar with fruits.
Yeah. It's nice. Some people, it just seems that people are either some people really like gels and like to keep it really simple, and then I always like to hear people's answers to that question. I'm always interested to hear what people like to eat. What would you say has been the biggest mistake that you've made during your career, you know, whether in a race or, you know, within your training?
I don't think I did. I never really took a big misstep. I think I'm really happy about my career, and so no, I don't think I'm not. I don't think I took wrong decisions at any time.
That's lovely. What do you believe are 3 characteristics that are needed to be successful in ultra running?
I think it's important to believe in yourself, in your capacities, abilities, and I think it's important to work together. If people have a trainer, set up like make a good plan, and train according to, and then I think never ask too much of yourself, so that goes together in this. So take it like step by step, and put your goals not too high. And then I think another thing which is important is to enjoy what you're doing. So there's no point of doing it, and you won't be good at something if you don't enjoy it. So these are the three key factors, I think.
Yeah, that's good advice. And finally, I wanted to ask you if there's anybody who's watching who is considering just starting out ultra running, perhaps thinking about entering their first ultra, what would be your advice for them?
I think it's amazing to run ultra. I mean, it's a different kind of achievement. The short competitions are like very fast. Some you push yourself hard all the time, and ultra running you have to think a lot more and make your strategy. Think about your food. Think about your running. You have to know yourself really well. So yeah, my advice is difficult. I think just to try and get to know yourself, to get the feel of what it feels on how it feels on your leg to prepare yourself for an ultra, work together with a nutritionist, a good trainer. And maybe my advice would be not to make too many kilometers in the preparation. So I sometimes see many people who are running an ultra that I see them at the start of the race and they're actually tired because they've done all those training sessions, so many kilometers, so they don't feel very fit when they are starting the ultra. And I think even when you run an ultra, you don't have to run long stretches. Like you don't have to go running for 50 kilometers or like my longest training is maybe 2 hours or once in a while 3-4 hours in a very very low pace, but I'm not there all the time running through the mountains. I do very specific sessions, and I even do like 20-second sprints, so a lot of high intensity work and not too much volume training.
Yeah, oh, that's really good advice, thank you very much. It's really been so lovely to talk to you, Ragna. I think that just about brings us to the end of the session. Like I mentioned, we'll put the links underneath so that everybody can follow your journey, your adventure this year, and wish you all the best with it and your lovely family. And thank you very much for joining us.